Before Lucifer fell, he was not alone. He was surrounded by an elite assembly, an angelic host unlike any other. They were guardians, formed in glory, stationed near the throne, and charged with sacred duties in the highest realms of heaven. But who were they, and why have we forgotten them? What if I told you that Lucifer once led an army, not of rebellion, but of reverence? Their names are hidden, their functions scattered across Scripture like cosmic echoes, but their story still burns beneath the surface of divine history. This is the mystery of Lucifer's forgotten army, angels of light who guarded eternity, and whose silence still cries out across the ages. He was called the Anointed Cherub, who covers, not a title of rebellion, but of radiant obedience. Lucifer, son of the morning, was sculpted not in shadow, but in shimmering brilliance, adorned with every precious stone, built not to contend with the throne, but to shield it. Scripture declares that he walked among the stones of fire, a realm where holiness was not spoken of, it was breathed. His wings overshadowed the very mercy seat of divine glory, and he moved not with pride, but with purpose. In the age before time, when the cosmos had not yet stretched its limbs across the deep, when light had not yet pierced the veil of primordial silence, heaven pulsed with order, beauty, and function. It was in this holy symphony that Lucifer was placed, not as a soloist, but as a conductor of glory. Beneath his command existed a hidden hierarchy, celestial beings whose names are scarcely whispered in the scrolls of men. Thrones, dominions, and powers, watchers, scribes, and guardians, entities wreathed in flame, eyes embedded into their forms, voices that vibrated with the harmonics of creation itself. These were not poetic constructs. They were living flames assigned to uphold the sanctity of the throne. They bore no swords because no rebellion had yet been conceived. They chanted no warnings because all was in unity. Some among them sustained the rhythm of the heavenly tabernacle, beings like the Ophanim, wheels within wheels full of eyes, reflecting the perfect order of divine omniscience and motion. Others stood sentinel at the thresholds of glory, the cherubim, carved into memory by fire and wings, stationed as boundary keepers between what was holy and what was not yet permitted. And within the layers of these ranks stood seraphim, burning ones whose worship was not sung but lived, whose every movement stirred the smoke of sanctity around the throne. These beings, arranged with mathematical precision and spiritual purpose, moved in step with the will of the Most High, and among them, Lucifer stood at the pinnacle, not as their creator, but as their mirror, reflecting the brilliance of the one seated above all thrones. His brightness was not self-born, but derivative, light borrowed from eternity's flame, yet radiant enough to dazzle the uninitiated. He did not act apart from heaven's will, but at its center. He was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, not because he surpassed his brethren in essence, but because he embodied their harmony. He moved in tandem with the living creatures, his presence conducting their glory toward its source. And under his oversight, the great host flourished. The watchers recorded, the thrones governed, the wheels turned, the fire burned, and worship, pure and unspeakable, rose like vapor around the eternal altar. Each angelic being had its sphere, its station, its purpose. There was no confusion, only revelation, no ambition, only reflection. There were no cries of battle, only the continual proclamation of, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." Before the foundations of the earth, This angelic civilization was not stagnant, but dynamic, a spiritual kingdom pulsating with unseen intelligence and purpose. Lucifer was not an outsider to this flow. He was its overseer, the one anointed not just to witness the throne, but to cover it. Covering, in the language of heaven, was not concealment. It was protection, intimacy, reverence. His wings were not ornaments. They were shields of glory that bore the weight of proximity to the uncreated light. And beneath that covering, the celestial hierarchy functioned with sublime exactness. In the holy mount of God, every rank of angelic order found its rhythm under Lucifer's command. Not domination, coordination, not tyranny, alignment. Ancient traditions, echoed in apocryphal visions and the whispered fragments of early prophets, speak of the immense scale of this hidden host. Daniel beheld thousands upon thousands attending to the throne, 10,000 times 10,000 standing before him. These were not idle masses. They were the very machinery of heaven's governance. And among them were those who answered to Lucifer's voice, not in worship of him, but in obedience to the chain of command established by the Creator himself. The fire that surrounded the throne did not consume, it clarified. The eyes that covered the beings did not blink, they beheld. And in that sacred matrix of flame and light and song, Lucifer's place was one of honor, purity, and delegated power. He led a worship that did not terminate on him, but flowed through him to the Ancient of Days. He was not a rival to the throne. He was its shield-bearer. And under his covering, the glory of the Lord was revealed in splendor to the watching host. Yet in this perfection lay the potential for deviation. For even in the highest order of heaven, there was free will, not as a flaw, but as a gift. The loyalty of the host was not programmed. It was chosen, day by eternal day. Lucifer's army, though perfect in design, was not immune to curiosity. They served not out of fear, but awe. And awe, when untethered from humility, can evolve into something far more dangerous. But in these early days, there was no trace of that shadow. The army of light marched in reverent cadence. The seraphim cried their unending hymn. The cherubim guarded their sacred ground. The watchers recorded the decrees of God. And above them all, Lucifer stood, a guardian, not a god, a covering, not a king, a reflection, not the source. His army was glorious because their function was pure. They existed not to exalt themselves, but to reveal the brilliance of the one who sits enthroned in unapproachable light. They were the first witnesses of glory, the earliest voices in the song of creation. And their story, though forgotten by time and buried beneath the noise of rebellion, remains etched in the architecture of heaven. For before the fall, there was order. Before pride, there was praise. And before war ever touched the stars, there was allegiance. Before we continue, if this content has blessed your life, like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the channel, and if you would like to bless the channel, click the Super Thanks button and leave an offering of any amount or become a member. That way, we can continue investing in research and improvements to bless your life even more. There is a government older than time, older than dust, older than the tremble of space before the stars were called by name. A kingdom not of geography, but of glory, ruled not by councils of men, but by layers of authority so vast, so precise, that even eternity bends to their structure. This is the government of heaven, and within its architecture, the angelic host is not a choir of floating spirits, but an administration, a court, a network of celestial offices designed to execute the will of the Most High across realms seen and unseen. Scripture does not shy away from this mystery. Paul wrote of thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers, not as abstractions, but as jurisdictions. Daniel beheld courts set in motion, with thousands upon thousands standing before the Ancient of Days, and the books opened, suggesting deliberation, execution, and oversight. These beings are not simply witnesses to glory, they are its stewards. Among them were the thrones, angelic creatures positioned close to the presence of God, not seated upon thrones, but being the thrones themselves. Channels of divine justice through which the decrees of heaven flowed like fire through golden conduits. They did not speak their own judgments. They bore the weight of the Lord's voice and transmitted his rulings across the fabric of creation. Their presence marked zones of spiritual authority, regions in heaven and on earth, where God's verdicts had been sealed. Below and beside them were the dominions, rulers of vast spiritual provinces, and principalities who oversaw particular aspects of created reality. Each tasked not with speculation, but execution, ensuring that the divine will did not remain ethereal, but took form, sound, motion. Then there were the powers, warrior beings assigned to resist darkness and subdue chaos, not merely in battle, but through alignment of all things to the order of heaven. These offices did not overlap, they interlocked. And within this intricate lattice of eternal governance stood the Watchers, beings unlike any others mentioned briefly but weightily in the book of Daniel, where they descend with authority to judge the hearts of kings and deliver the edicts of heaven. Their title in Aramaic is ear, meaning those who are awake, because they never sleep, never cease from watching, recording, evaluating. They are not messengers. They are assessors, sentinels of moral and cosmic alignment, guardians of thresholds where divine decree meets human agency. They do not simply observe, they pass judgment when called upon. In Daniel's vision, it was a watcher who announced the humiliation of Nebuchadnezzar. Not God directly, but a delegate, one of the holy ones from the heavenly council, revealing that heaven does not act alone, but in layered unity. The Book of Enoch expands this vision further, detailing watchers assigned to early humanity, tasked with teaching and protecting, but whose defection would spark the first cracks in the harmony of heaven. These beings once stood among Lucifer's cohort, not as rebels, but as sentinels of the boundary between heaven and earth. And then, closest to the throne and moving beneath it, were the Ophanim, living wheels of fire and eyes, described by Ezekiel in a vision so strange that human language staggers under its weight. They moved in perfect synchronization with the Spirit of God. They turned without turning. They saw without blinking. Their rotation was not mechanical, but alive, reverent, resonant. They carried the platform of divine glory, the chariot, the throne that moved between realms. They did not merely follow the will of God. The will of God was in them, and above these beings, Lucifer was stationed, not above in power, but above in visibility. He was the covering cherub, positioned to coordinate, reflect, and protect. He did not merely sing, he administrated. His role was orchestral, not only in music, but in function. He ensured the convergence of flame and decree, of movement and song, of judgment and mercy. He was not a rival to the council, he was its liaison. He moved among the fiery stones, the place of celestial deliberation, where spiritual protocols were set into motion. His covering extended not just over the throne, but over the sacred processes that sustained it. He witnessed the decrees before they were spoken aloud. He heard the thundering whisper before it became echo. He watched the divine pen inscribe judgment upon the winds. And beneath him, an entire order of beings awaited his signal. Not in worship of him, but in deference to the structure established by the Creator himself. Ancient Jewish tradition describes the heavenly court as a divine senate, an assembly of spiritual beings who attend the will of God not as advisors, but as executors. Lucifer walked among them, not as their superior in essence, but in position. He moved between ranks like light through crystal, shaping, reflecting, illuminating. He stood with the thrones when justice was pronounced. He stood among the watchers when boundaries were tested. He stood with the wheels when movement was initiated. And through it all, he was trusted. Not feared, not envied, trusted. His beauty did not threaten, it glorified. His authority did not disrupt, it aligned, until something shifted, but not yet. In this time, this pre-temporal age, Lucifer's presence was synonymous with divine order. His leadership was unquestioned because it was not self-derived. It was assigned, ordained. He was the guardian of structure, not the breaker of it. The celestial court functioned because each being knew their place, their role, their reach. The thrones did not try to observe. The watchers did not try to move. The wheels did not try to speak. And the cherub did not try to reign. Each glory was distinct, each function holy, each rank harmonized with the others like facets of a single jewel, reflecting the eternal fire at its center. The army of light was not a multitude of identical beings. It was a society, a civilization, a kingdom before kingdoms. And it functioned not by fear, but by reverence, not by force, but by design. Lucifer's greatness lay in this, that he knew his place and kept it. He knew the strength of the watchers, the wisdom of the thrones, the weight of the decrees, and the fury of the wheels, and he moved among them with honor. The layers of heaven turned like clockwork powered by eternity, and at its heart stood a guardian of unmatched splendor, whose calling was not to rise, but to reflect. He did not need more. He had everything. And yet, even in a kingdom where nothing lacked, desire would soon awaken in the unlikeliest heart. Before the first atom trembled, before gravity pulled its first thread through the fabric of reality, before Eden was seated in the dust of time, there existed a world without decay, without deviation, without division, a realm untouched by entropy, a kingdom sustained by purity, where sound and light flowed as one eternal stream from the presence of the uncreated. This was the age before time, the era of celestial motion, where the very act of existence was worship, and every breathless second was a note in the endless anthem of glory. There was no sun, no moon, yet there was brilliance, no atmosphere, yet there was breath, no distance, yet there was structure. The throne of God stood at the heart of this eternal order, not perched atop geography, but enthroned upon praise, encircled by living beings who did not age, did not tire, and did not question. Closest to him, suspended above the sapphire pavement of divine majesty, were the seraphim, beings of fire, whose voices were thunder and whose wings stirred the breath of heaven with every declaration of holy, holy, holy. They were not merely messengers, they were purity embodied, flames of consciousness whose very existence was a living inferno of adoration. Surrounding them were the cherubim, bearers of glory, defenders of the threshold between the infinite and the created, guardians of the space where divinity stooped to reveal itself. Their wings formed a canopy over the mercy seat, their eyes never ceasing to behold, their faces revealing the wisdom of man, the courage of the lion, the strength of the ox, and the vision of the eagle. Beneath them, supporting the movement of the throne, spun the Ophanim, the wheels within wheels, alive with seeing, filled with eyes and knowledge, rotating not in chaos, but in holy synchronization, reflecting that the presence of God was not static, but living, active, mobile. They turned not because they must, but because the spirit within them willed it. Their motion was not random, but prophetic, declaring that the glory of God moves across boundaries, dimensions, and realms. These beings formed a celestial mechanism so intricate that even eternity could not improve it, and into this sacred harmony was woven the function of the thrones, angelic essences upon whom divine justice rested like gold upon a scepter. The thrones did not speak unless the Ancient of Days decreed. They did not shift unless his presence stirred. They were the still points in the wheel of judgment, fixed in purpose yet radiant with splendor. And amidst this hierarchy, moving not above but within the system, was Lucifer, the anointed cherub, the seal of perfection, the radiant one, son of the morning. He was not the source of order, but he was its crown. Created to reflect, to cover, to glorify, he stood among the fiery stones, not as a rival to God, but as a conduit of God's majesty. His voice was melody, his form adorned with precious stones, his presence a prism that caught the light of divinity and scattered it across the ranks of heaven. He was not greater in being, but more visible in role, the central reflector of what all others beheld. The angelic host did not bow to him. They aligned with him, as all things aligned with the will of the Most High. His movement stirred worship. His wings overshadowed the throne not to obscure, but to honor. Every gesture he made was mirrored in the cadence of the host. The watchers recorded his rhythm. The dominions moved when he signaled. The seraphim increased their cry when his brilliance passed. The wheels beneath the throne turned in anticipation of his direction. He was the director of heaven's harmony, the minister of protocol in the courts of the king. There was no pride in him, only purpose, no ambition, only awe, no self-exaltation, only reflection. He knew his place, and in that knowledge was peace. The age before time was not silent. It resounded with the echoes of living fire, the chorus of beings who sang not for performance, but because their nature demanded it. Worship was not an action, it was the atmosphere. The air itself was reverence. And Lucifer moved in the midst of it like the gleam of a blade forged for holiness. Every rank knew its role. There was no confusion between the messenger and the guardian, the flame and the wheel, the throne and the voice. The government of heaven was not a system of restraint. It was a choreography of glory, a living temple whose stones were minds, whose walls were wings, whose floor was fire. Lucifer did not command by volume, but by alignment. He had no army of conquest. He led an order of sanctified purpose. His authority was not declared, it was manifest. The motion of the host, the turning of the wheels, the rising of the flame, all of it responded to his covering. And he never questioned the one he served, for the one he served was the fountain of all life, and to reflect that life was his highest joy. In that age, there was no memory of sin, no vocabulary for rebellion, no hint of corruption. The only sound was holiness, the only color was light, the only language was worship. The stars had not yet been spoken, and yet heaven sparkled. Galaxies slumbered in the breath of God, and yet there was brilliance. Time had not yet begun to count, and yet there was sequence, rhythm, precision, all of it upheld by the invisible will of the Eternal One, and through it moved Lucifer, a radiant being whose purpose was sacred, whose alignment was perfect. He did not burn like the seraphim, but he reflected their flame. He did not turn like the Ophanim, but he signaled their motion. He did not decree like the thrones, but he echoed their judgment. He was the harmony between functions, the silence between the thunder, the brilliance between the flames. The age before time was not an empty span of stillness. It was a theater of divine motion, and Lucifer, far from being the enemy of that motion, was its instrument. But within that sacred design, a single seed of deviation could still take root. For even in eternity, freedom remains, and where there is freedom, there is the possibility of a different note, one not sanctioned by the throne, but whispered in secret, born not in the mouth, but in the heart. Even within the corridors of eternity, where light never dims and worship never ceases, the architecture of creation included one terrifying gift: choice. It was not granted to angels in the same way it would later be offered to man, with fruit and consequence. But it was there, in the will, in the silence between commands, in the unseen crevices of loyalty. Heaven was not programmed, it was alive. The thrones who bore judgment, the watchers who recorded decrees, the cherubim who guarded, the seraphim who burned, they all knew obedience, not because they were incapable of rebellion, but because they chose devotion again and again in the radiant presence of the Most High. And so did Lucifer. For an age beyond counting, he walked in purity through the stones of fire, conducting the order of the heavens with unspeakable precision, his every movement a gesture of praise, his every breath in tune with the rhythm of the throne. But over time, if such a word can even describe something in eternity, a new thought began to crystallize, slow and unspoken. It was not shouted. It did not even rise to the surface. It was an ember buried beneath the gold. It began not with blasphemy, but with admiration, his own. As he passed among the ranks of the host, as he directed the watchers and signaled the wheels and shaded the mercy seat with his wings, he caught glimpses of himself reflected in the eyes of those who followed his lead. And in those glances, something ancient trembled. He had always known he was beautiful. God had made him that way. Every stone of splendor adorned him. Every tone of praise harmonized with him. But now, beauty became awareness. Awareness became wonder. Wonder became hunger. The glory that once passed through him now began to settle in him. He stood too long in the reflection and forgot the source. He listened too deeply to the harmonies and began to mistake the echo for the origin. What if, the thought whispered, glory could belong to me, not stolen in violence, not claimed in outrage, just shifted, slightly, naturally, subtly, like a river that bends over time. He was, after all, the covering cherub. The armies moved when he moved. The fire danced when he passed. The watchers deferred to his rhythm. The wheels rotated in anticipation of his signal. The throne itself shimmered beneath the spread of his wings. If worship moved through him, could it not also move toward him? And still, he did not speak. No declaration, no insubordination, only a silence. But that silence was heavy. It became a gravity, and around him, others began to feel its pull. Not with suspicion, but with awe. The angelic host, created for order and wonder, began to marvel not only at the one who sat upon the throne, but at the one who shielded it. Their reverence was not rebellion, but it began to lean. Their admiration was not treason, but it began to bend. They saw in Lucifer not the source of glory, but a mediator of it, and for the first time, that mediation began to rival the throne itself in their hearts. The Watchers, who observed creation and recorded divine motion, now observed their commander with curiosity. The Thrones, who bore the justice of God like a scepter, now hesitated, just for a moment, before responding to the cherub's signal. The wheels turned, but the eyes within them blinked. Something was shifting, and the shift was not in heaven's command, but in its perception. Lucifer had not risen. He had only paused. He had only gazed. But that gaze was enough to send ripples through eternity. The smoke of his thought began to seep into the breath of others. The cherubim around him did not rebel, but they began to murmur in silence. The seraphim above did not stop burning, but a tremor moved through their flames. The great host, still loyal in function, began to tilt in feeling. The line between alignment and adoration grew thin, and still no voice from the throne interrupted. The Most High, who sees all, said nothing, not because he was unaware, but because love cannot be demanded. Loyalty that is enforced is not loyalty, it is slavery. And so, heaven watched itself bend. In the silence of the Holy Mount, a question emerged not from the mouth of God, but from the heart of his most radiant servant. What if I could ascend? It was not a sword that broke the order. It was a question. And questions, when left unchecked, become paths. And paths, when walked alone, become exile. Lucifer had not left his post. He had not lifted his hand. But in his heart, something had already moved beyond the boundary of holiness. The desire was not to destroy heaven, but to possess it. Not to defy glory, but to direct it. Not to abolish the throne, but to sit beside it, or above. His thoughts were his own, yet their weight began to reshape the atmosphere around him. The other angels still obeyed, but with eyes now drawn not just upward, but outward. The glory of God had never faded, but the clarity of that glory had begun to blur. Lucifer, once the mirror, was becoming a veil. The light that once passed cleanly through him was now bending around him, reflected, but also absorbed. And as he absorbed, others reflected. Worship continued. But in its undertones, a new melody began to play, a dissonant note, almost imperceptible, that carried the tension of hidden awe and misplaced wonder. The ranks of heaven did not know they were changing. That is the nature of subtle rebellion. It is not declared, it is felt, and the army that once guarded the throne began to gaze more often at the guardian than the glory. And still, heaven said nothing. For the test had begun, not in battle, but in devotion, not in power, but in affection. And affection, when twisted, becomes idolatry. And idolatry, when silent, is the most dangerous kind. For it pretends to be honor while secretly carving a new throne, one not made of holiness, but of pride. There was no sound in heaven louder than silence. Not the roar of seraphim calling holy, not the thunder of wheels beneath the throne, not the rush of wings that beat with eternal rhythm. The silence of God in the midst of rising deviation was not absence. It was judgment suspended in mercy, sovereignty cloaked in patience. The Most High, whose voice spoke galaxies into motion and split the sea with a whisper, withheld his speech. Not because he was unaware, but because he was revealing something deeper than obedience, the raw weight of unforced allegiance. Heaven, in all its burning symmetry, had begun to bend, not break, not collapse, but bend, ever so slightly, like a blade tested by heat. The host still stood, The council still convened. The watchers continued their recordings, their countless eyes blinking like stars. The thrones upheld decrees without flaw. The seraphim cried their anthem without interruption, their voices shaking the framework of the heavens. And yet, beneath it all, in the innermost current of loyalty, a tension gathered. Like a note held too long in a melody once perfect, now subtly strained. The one who had once moved in pure reflection of divine light had begun to cast his own glow, faint but growing. The cherub who covered no longer merely shielded, he began to absorb. Angels in his proximity, still wholly in action, began to adjust their posture, not in rebellion, but in reverence misplaced. They bowed to the throne, but lingered at the wings. They sang to the Holy One, but glanced toward the luminous shadow that stood before him. And the Most High, enthroned above the circle of heaven, watched and said nothing. This was not negligence. This was not divine hesitation. It was the long inhale before a verdict. The sacred pause before eternity drew its sword. In this pause, the true nature of every heart was revealed, not by force, but by freedom. Loyalty in the absence of threat. Worship in the silence of command. The Lord of hosts had the power to quench the deviation in a breath, to scatter the swelling pride in the cherub's heart with a single syllable. But he did not, because coerced obedience is not love, and love, without the liberty to walk away, is not love at all. So the silence continued, and in that silence, heaven became a stage for the invisible. Lucifer's followers, if they could yet be called that, still functioned with precision. Orders were fulfilled, movements executed, the ranks stood tall. But behind their brilliance, questions stirred. Could glory be shared? Could proximity to power evolve into ownership of it? Could the covering become a crown? These were not shouted inquiries. They were contemplations born in admiration, fed by proximity, nurtured by silence. The watchers, whose duty was to observe the earth, now recorded the unrest of heaven, their scrolls filled with lines not of rebellion, but of reorientation. They noted the changes in glance, the softening of distinction, the gaze that lingered too long not on the throne, but on its guardian. The wheels still turned, but their motion felt heavier, like a dance out of rhythm, waiting for a conductor who hesitated. The seraphim still burned, but the air around them quivered, not with holiness alone, but with anticipation. What would the Most High do? When would he speak? And still, nothing. No trumpet, no thunder, only silence that carved reality with invisible hands. And in that silence, choice matured. Lucifer, ever radiant, did not yet act. He still covered, still led, still stood beneath the gaze of the Ancient of Days. But his inner fire now carried a different flame, a hunger cloaked in reverence, a storm veiled in light. He did not declare himself worthy. He merely stood long enough for others to suggest it. He did not reach for worship. He only remained still while it bent his way. And each day, if such a word can apply to eternity, he tested the boundary further. Would the Most High correct him? Would a word from the throne break the rising tide? But no voice came, not because God was uncertain, but because he was allowing Lucifer to reveal himself. Not to him, for God needed no revelation, but to the host who served, to the ranks who watched, to the realms that would one day know the price of their choice. Heaven, untainted, was now being sifted, not by war, not yet, but by will. Angels who had never questioned now found questions whispering at the edge of their awe. Was the throne the only source of light? Or could glory reside elsewhere, perhaps in the one who had borne it so long? The danger was not in defiance, it was in drift. No angel had raised a weapon, no watcher had denied his post, no seraphim had ceased their cry. And yet the universe tilted, ever so slightly. It tilted not in space, but in spirit, not in structure, but in focus. And still, God waited. The Lord, who sees the end from the beginning, allowed the seed to sprout, not to grow unchecked, but to reach a height where no one could deny its presence. Lucifer would not be condemned by accusation, but by culmination. His thoughts would ripen into deeds. His desire would give birth to declaration. And when that day came, none in heaven would be confused. All would know what had been revealed in silence. The silence of heaven was not weakness, it was justice gathering proof. It was love holding its breath. It was the king giving his subject room to choose, so that when judgment came, no voice could rise in protest. Not even the brightest of them all. Long before the garden flourished, before Adam was sculpted from dust, before the serpent slithered with cunning, a fracture cracked the still perfection of the celestial order, not in the throne room itself, but in the outer fields of heaven's dominion, where watchers had been stationed to observe the development of the newly created earth. They were not rebels at first. They were guardians, divine sentinels assigned to monitor the flow of history as it unfolded on this fledgling planet. Observers of divine order, recorders of time's earliest rhythms. Their mission was clear: to remain apart, to behold but never intervene, to watch without shaping, to guide only by restraint. These watchers were high-ranking angels, selected not for beauty or song, but for clarity, discipline, and unwavering loyalty. Yet the earth, wild and blooming, whispered seduction not with rebellion, but with wonder. Humanity, still innocent and unguarded, shone with a peculiar glory. The daughters of men, radiant in their youth, curious in their gaze, became objects of fascination to those who were only ever meant to observe. At first, it was intrigue, then it was longing, then desire. The watchers descended. They did not fall like lightning. They stepped, willingly, eyes wide open, hearts fully aware. They crossed the line not in ignorance, but in defiance, knowing that heaven had forbidden such mingling. Their names are preserved like ghostly echoes in the oldest of texts. Semyaza, their leader, who swore an oath with the others. Azazel, who taught men the forging of swords and shields and adorned the sons of Cain with the art of blood. Penemu, who unveiled secrets of wisdom too great for mortal minds, and a host of others, 200 in all, whose descent was not a stumble, but a mutiny in seed form. They took wives for themselves, uniting spirit with flesh, twisting the divine blueprint into a grotesque parody. From this forbidden union came the Nephilim, giants in stature, titans of corruption, monsters in thought and deed, whose violence stained the ground and whose appetite shattered innocence. The earth groaned beneath their weight. The air trembled with the sorcery their fathers taught. War, bloodshed, seduction, enchantments, vanity, and dominion flowed like poison from the mouths of those who were never meant to speak. The Watchers, in teaching secrets meant for the stars, brought chaos to the soil. They introduced humanity to knowledge divorced from wisdom, progress without morality, power without reverence. Heaven watched. The Most High, whose silence had allowed Lucifer to test the weight of his own heart, now beheld a different kind of transgression, one not birthed in heaven, but in its outskirts, where boundary had been breached and divine order ignored. It was not yet the Great Rebellion, but it was its foreshadowing. Lucifer, still stationed in the holy mount, saw it all. He did not move to stop it. He did not sound the alarm. He observed. And in their fall, he learned. He studied the cracks in the structure, the fault lines in loyalty, the weight of unspoken desire. He saw that heaven, though glorious, could be tested, that mercy, though infinite, had thresholds, that the Most High, though sovereign, allowed time for corruption to unfold. The watchers were judged. Scripture records their fate in whispers. The angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Jude 6. Peter writes it as well. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness. 2 Peter 2:4. Their judgment was swift, yet even in swiftness it followed process. Enoch, the ancient prophet, was sent to declare their doom. You have seen and loved flesh, and now you shall never return to heaven. They were bound in Tartarus, sealed beneath the mountains, their cries echoing through the hidden caverns of time. But the echoes remained. Their fall was not erased, it was remembered. And Lucifer, ever the observer, stored every lesson deep within the architecture of his desire. The watchers had not sought the throne, they had sought the earth. Their hunger was not for glory, but for indulgence. Yet even this was enough to provoke divine wrath. So what, Lucifer wondered, would heaven do to one who reached higher, not to pollute the clay, but to ascend the flame? He did not act yet. He did not move. But he understood something now. The structure could bend. The host could break. The throne, though unshaken, would not interfere until the moment of unveiling. And so, he bided his time. He remained the covering cherub. He stood silent at the mercy seat. He watched the watchers fall. He heard the silence of their chains, the weeping of their offspring as they drowned beneath the flood to come. He witnessed the sorrow that spread through the lower ranks, the way other angels looked away when their names were spoken. And he began to calculate, not in numbers, in timing, in thresholds, in silence. The Most High, he realized, would wait until the moment was full. The judgment of the watchers was not instant. It matured. It was given space. It was permitted to ripen until no doubt remained. And this to Lucifer was not a deterrent. It was an opening. If heaven allowed corruption to reveal itself before acting, then perhaps he too could rise, slowly, carefully, imperceptibly, until his position became permanence, until his desire became decree, until the one who covered the throne would crown himself in light. And if God did not spare the watchers, then Lucifer would ensure his own rebellion would not be so easily confined. His transgression would not be rooted in earth. It would strike the heavens themselves. He would not seek flesh. He would seek fire. He would not descend. He would ascend. And heaven, in its mercy, would be tested to its breaking point. It began like lightning, not from earth to sky, but from the heart of heaven itself, a sudden rift where only harmony had ever reigned, a jagged bolt of pride tearing across eternity's veil. The silence that had once cloaked the Most High's courtroom was shattered not by declaration, but by defection. Lucifer, once the anointed cherub who walked among the stones of fire, now rose not in worship, but in challenge. His ascent was not physical. It was philosophical, spiritual, cosmic. He no longer bowed in reflection. He stood in defiance, and with him, a third of heaven's host, a vast multitude of radiant beings once sworn to the throne, rose in echo of his pride. They were not deceived. They were not coerced. They chose. And that choice rang like a bell across the vault of heaven. These were not the lesser ranks, not the fringes of the host. These were scribes who once etched the decrees of the eternal into the fabric of the cosmos. These were watchers who once preserved the boundary between holiness and the world. These were Ophanim, who spun beneath the throne and now ground their wheels against its foundation. These were Seraphim, whose fire had dimmed, whose song had twisted, whose holy had grown hoarse with hesitation. They had once stood as protectors. Now they formed a legion. No longer bearers of light, they became its challengers. Lucifer no longer moved with the grace of heaven's choreography. He now surged with the fury of ambition. Scripture gives him a new name: the dragon, the serpent of old, Satan, the accuser. His wings, once spread to shield, now beat against the light. His beauty, once a mirror of God's majesty, now became a mask for ruin. And as he stood, the heaven he once served recoiled, but it did not yield. Michael rose. The Archangel, the warrior prince, the guardian of covenant, the champion of righteousness, did not wait for command. He had long stood silent, watching the slow corruption take form. But now the line had been crossed. War broke out, not metaphor, not dream. War, real and righteous. The armies of the Most High assembled, not with desperation, but with certainty. Their weapons were not forged in panic. They had always been ready. Their strength was not summoned in haste. It had always been waiting. The host that had never known division now aligned with a single cause: to preserve the sanctity of the throne. Swords of light clashed with shadows that once bore halos. Fire met fire. Wind met wind. The cry of Michael pierced the firmament, echoed by countless loyal angels who followed not power, but the person seated in light. And across the heavenly expanse, a battle unfolded unlike anything time or space would ever again behold. The wheels of the throne, those Ophanim, once still and solemn, now spun with fury, their eyes aflame, their rotations crashing into the distorted spirals of their fallen kin. The thrones tilted. The watchers burned. The air of heaven, once scented with unbroken praise, now vibrated with the shock of spiritual violence. The firmament cracked with the sound of rebellion grinding against righteousness. Lucifer, clothed now in accusation, hurled his claims against the Most High. "I will ascend," he cried. "I will make my throne above the stars. I will be like the Most High." But no reply came from the throne. Only light, brilliant, immovable light. And from that throne surged power, not wrath but judgment, not vengeance but vindication. The war raged not in days or hours, for time was not yet counted, but it raged in fullness. Every rank that had once questioned now chose. Every angel that had once lingered now aligned. And when the final moment came, it was not with negotiation. It was with expulsion. Scripture says the dragon was cast down, and his angels with him, not drifted, not demoted, cast, like refuse from the purity of glory. The battleground was not leveled. It was resolved, and heaven stood, divided now. Not in essence, but in consequence. What was once unseen had been revealed. The hidden pride had met its limit. The silent tension had found its voice, and the throne of God remained, untouched, unshaken, untouched by the storm. The rebellion was not a threat to God. It was a test of all creation, and the test had been answered. Before we go deeper into the judgment that followed, consider this. If this story has stirred something within you, if the ancient battle between light and darkness speaks to your heart, Then take a moment to let your voice rise with ours. Like, comment, and share this message. Subscribe to the channel, and if you feel led to sow into this mission, you can bless this channel by clicking the Super Thanks button or becoming a member. Every offering helps us reveal more of heaven's truth with excellence, clarity, and reverence. Thank you for standing with us. He fell, but not as a solitary flame extinguished in the night. He fell as a star dragged down by gravity, not of matter, but of judgment, a weight measured not in mass, but in holiness. And with him descended a third of the host, no longer called angels, no longer clothed in light, no longer numbered among the sons of glory. They plummeted not merely through space, but through identity. The names that once rang through heaven's courts like living jewels, Azazel, Semyaza, Arachiel, and many more, were blotted out, struck from the records of eternity, not because God forgot, but because heaven does not record corruption. Their fall was not simply relocation, it was deletion. Their names became voids, their stations became absences. The thrones they once inhabited now stand as hollow symbols of what was lost. These were not foot soldiers, not mindless drones. They were guardians, commanders, scribes, ministers of flame and decree, now twisted, now empty, now chained. Scripture is sparse in describing them, not because their power was insignificant, but because their glory was forfeited. And what is remembered of them is not their splendor, but their silence. They are the unnamed third, the broken mirror of heaven's harmony, the negative space that reveals, by contrast, the radiance of the loyal. Lucifer, now Satan, the adversary, fell as the architect of a ruin that would echo through ages. His followers did not resist the fall. They followed him willingly, because rebellion is not birthed in the moment of action. It germinates in the soil of admiration turned envy, reverence turned desire. Their titles, watchers, thrones, powers, were not taken by others. Heaven did not promote replacements. The Most High, in infinite wisdom, left the vacancies unfilled, not because there were no worthy angels, but because absence became a monument, an eternal reminder, a visible scar in the otherwise perfect symmetry of divine government. Even now, in visions of heaven recorded by prophets and seers, we find no mention of new thrones seated where the fallen once sat. Their counsels remain unspoken. Their spheres remain dimmed. The silence of their names is not forgetfulness. It is divine commentary. The watchers who descended to earth were bound in chains of gloomy darkness, as Peter wrote. The thrones that distorted justice became shadows, transformed into powers of the air, principalities of rebellion, spiritual forces in high places, as Paul warned. The wheels that once turned with divine motion now spin in confusion, their vision obscured, their wisdom perverted. The fall did not merely remove them, it inverted them. Their glory became corruption. Their light became false illumination. Their songs became whispers of deception. They exist, but they do not belong. Their exile is more than displacement. It is disinheritance. They were not cast into oblivion. They were cast into awareness of what they once were and will never be again. Lucifer himself was not stripped of beauty, but beauty now burns with a terrible irony. The precious stones that once adorned him glisten with the dust of rage. His voice, once melodic, now accuses. His throne, once the covering presence over gods, is now a parody, offered to him only by those he deceives. And the army that once moved in perfect unity now stumbles in discord, their ranks fractured, their loyalties poisoned by the same pride that felled their prince. Yet their memory lingers, not in heaven, but in the spiritual atmosphere of earth. Their influence threads through myth, through shadow, through the ancient fears and fascinations of mankind. They became gods to pagans, devils to prophets, tempters to saints. Their absence from heaven is their presence in history. And yet, even as they roar in darkness, their origin cannot be denied. They once stood in light. And it is that origin that makes their fall a warning, not just a punishment. For what they lost was not a privilege. They lost nearness. They lost presence. They lost the throne. Their fall left a void, and that void still hums with consequence. The guardian posts they once manned are unmanned. The spheres they once administered are now administered by judgment, not by joy. And so heaven remains marked, not wounded, but scarred. The unfilled thrones are heaven's testimony that even eternity remembers. Even perfection bears record. Even the timeless hosts glance toward the empty places with reverent fear. For if angels fell, who are we to boast? And if heaven did not tolerate corruption, who among us can demand grace? It is a sobering thought, and yet a clarifying one. The silence of the fallen is not peace, it is testimony. Their names, once spoken with awe, now echo only in judgment. And in that silence, heaven speaks louder than thunder. Though the heavens shook, they did not collapse. Though a third of the stars fell, the greater light remained. For in the midst of rebellion, a remnant stood firm. These were the guardians who did not bend, the thrones who did not falter, the seraphim whose cry never wavered, the wheels whose turning never strayed. While Lucifer turned away from glory, Michael stood unmoved, his sword not drawn in ambition, but in allegiance. Gabriel, the messenger of mysteries, held to his commission, bearing the word of the Most High, without distortion, without delay. The seraphim still encircled the throne, wings aflame, declaring with every beat the holiness of the one who was and is to come. The Ophanim, those mysterious wheels of perception and fire, still turned in harmony with the breath of the Spirit, eyes open, gaze unbroken. These guardians, radiant and resolute, did not fill the void left by the fallen. They did not expand to claim more glory. They simply remained faithful, and in their steadfastness, heaven found its witness. For God did not rebuild the ranks in haste. He did not fill the seats of the departed with angels reshuffled. He allowed the vacancies to remain, not as failure, but as promise. Because something new was coming, a revelation that would stagger the very fabric of both earth and heaven. For he who sits on the throne declared not only restoration, but elevation. To him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. These words, spoken by the risen Christ in the book of Revelation, were not poetic sentiment. They were decree. They were prophecy. They were the unveiling of a mystery hidden since before time, that those made lower than angels would be lifted above them, not in essence, but in inheritance. The church, redeemed by blood, washed in grace, forged in suffering, would not merely be spectators of glory. They would be seated in it, not as replacements for angels, but as witnesses to mercy. The thrones left empty by rebellion were never reassigned to the remaining host. They were reserved for those who would bear the image of the Son, for those who, like Christ, would overcome by surrender, rule by humility, rise by descent. The guardians that remained were not diminished by this plan. They rejoiced in it. Michael, who battled the dragon, does not envy the redeemed. He guards them. Gabriel, who announced the Messiah, does not lament his station. He celebrates the mystery. The seraphim do not cease their cry when they behold the saints being sanctified. They increase it. Worthy is the Lamb, they shout, not because he defeated Satan alone, but because he lifted the lowly to thrones once occupied by light that turned to shadow. And the church, frail though it appears, is being prepared to take those seats, not as rulers of dominion, but as trophies of grace. The throne of Christ is not an isolated platform. It is a communion of conquered hearts made whole by the one who gave everything. The scars of Calvary will forever mark the hands that hold the scepter, and beside him will sit those whose robes were made white in his blood. This is not mythology. It is eschatology. It is destiny, and it humbles the cosmos. For in a war where angels fell, humanity, redeemed and renewed, will rise. The spiritual world does not resent this. It marvels. Paul writes that the angels long to look into the mysteries revealed to the church, that we will one day judge angels, not by authority, but by union with the one who reigns. The guardians that remain know this. They know their place is secure, but they also know that God's plan was never static. From the beginning, the Most High intended to share his rule not with the proud, but with the purified. The story of redemption is not just about saving souls from wrath. It is about restoring purpose to a broken structure. It is about replacing pride with praise, fallenness with faithfulness, rebellion with resurrection. And those who stand with Christ, those who endure, those who love him beyond sight, will be seated in places once occupied by the glorious and the fallen. This is why the New Jerusalem needs no temple, because the Lamb is its light, and those who walk in that light are no longer mere worshipers, but heirs. The angels who remained have not ceased to guard. The heavenly host has not diminished in vigilance, but now they stand beside a mystery they do not fully comprehend, that the dust of the earth, once shaped and broken, will be crowned with light, that those born into death will sit with the author of life, that the very creation once deceived by the serpent will rise to judge the dragon. This is not fantasy, it is prophecy, and it is already unfolding. The church is not waiting to be crowned. It is being shaped to wear the crown. The trials, the tears, the warfare, the endurance, all of it is the preparation of a bride who will one day sit beside her king. Thrones remain empty, not because heaven lacks, but because grace still invites. The guardians have not forgotten those who fell, but they also have not abandoned hope for those who rise. It is written that the war is not over, that the dragon, though cast down, has not been silenced. His rage, bound by time and tethered by prophecy, still churns in the shadows of the earth. And Revelation declares that he will rise again, not in secret, but in defiance. The final war, unlike the first, will not be whispered in the corridors of heaven, but shouted across the heavens and the earth, played out before angels and men, thrones and dominions, the living and the dead. The remnants of Lucifer's ancient army, those unchained, those still loosed upon the world, those whose whispers became religions, whose lies birthed empires, whose venom infected generations, will rally once more. The dragon, now called Satan, the deceiver of nations, will summon the fullness of his rebellion for one last assault. But this time, he will not merely aim for the throne of heaven. He will attempt to destroy the image of the one he could not overthrow, the redeemed, the church, the bride of the Lamb. But the time of patience will have ended. The age of intercession will be fulfilled. No more seals to break, no more scrolls to open. The heavens will split, not in silence, but in fire. And it will not be Michael who leads the charge. It will be the Lamb himself, the King of Kings, the Word made flesh, faithful and true. He will ride upon a white horse, not as the silent sacrifice, but as the roaring Lion of Judah. Upon his head will rest many crowns, and in his hand a sword that no darkness can withstand. His eyes will burn like flame, not with wrath alone, but with holy remembrance. His robe will be dipped in blood, not just the blood of enemies, but his own, poured out for those he comes to redeem. And behind him, the armies of heaven will follow, not with fear, but with fire. The seraphim, who never ceased their cry, the Ophanim, whose wheels still turn with the Spirit, the thrones now fixed in justice, the saints now glorified. The host will descend, not to fight for victory, but from it. For the war was won on a cross long ago. This final battle is not for conquest, but for closure. The dragon will rise, but only to fall again, this time, forever. He will gather his hosts. He will surround the beloved. He will breathe fury. But the breath of the Lord will consume him. The fire from the mouth of the king will devour him. The lake of fire, prepared not for man, but for the devil and his angels, will open its mouth. And the great deceiver, the architect of rebellion, the ancient guardian turned accuser, will be cast into it, not in defiance, but in defeat. And with him, every fallen watcher, every shadowed throne, every twisted wheel, every name that once glittered with light, but chose darkness instead. Judgment will not be delayed, it will be perfect. And as the smoke of their end rises, the heavens will resound with a new song, not one of sorrow, but of fulfillment. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the restoration will begin, not of the fallen, but of the cosmos they defiled. A new heaven, a new earth. The throne will descend, not in guarded mystery, but in unveiled glory. The Lamb will sit upon it, and his servants will see his face. No more temple, no more sun. For the Lord God will be the light, and the redeemed will reign with him forever. The thrones once vacated by rebellion will not be filled by angels, but by those redeemed from every tribe and tongue. Those who bore the image of dust will now shine with the glory of sons. Those who were lower than angels will now sing songs even angels cannot learn. And the heavenly host, the guardians who never wavered, will watch and wonder, not with envy, but with awe. For this was the mystery hidden before the foundation of the world, that the Lamb slain would not only conquer sin, but restore creation, that he would not only judge the fallen, but exalt the faithful, that he would not only reign, but share his reign with those who loved him. And those fallen ones who once stood as guardians will see glory restored, not to themselves, but to the one they betrayed. The throne they once covered will now be encircled by multitudes they sought to destroy. The song they silenced will now rise louder than ever. And the Lamb, once covered by wings, will now be crowned by the praises of nations. The war will be finished, the names forgotten, the rebellion crushed, and the throne will stand, not guarded in fear, but surrounded in worship, forever.